The barn sat at the edge of the sparse homestead, its weathered planks gray with years of wind and sun. The first thin streaks of dawn cut across the horizon, painting the prairie in muted ochre and slate. Samuel Harlan, 42, a man hardened by years of frontier survival and solitude, crept toward the barn door, his spur boots stirring the dust. A chill rode the morning wind, brushing against his leather coat, sharp as a warning. He had risen early, as always, though today an unease gnawed the back of his mind, an instinct he had learned not to ignore. A faint rustle inside the barn drew his attention. Samuel's hand went to the Colt at his hip, fingers brushing worn steel. "Show yourself," he called softly, voice low but firm, carrying over the dry, cold hay scent. The barn echoed with silence, save for the intermittent drip of condensation from the roof. Then a small figure bolted from behind a stack of barrels. A girl, her hair tangled, face smudged with dirt, eyes wide and terrified. She could not have been more than 14. Her tattered dress hung loose, the hem torn and soiled from a hurried escape. Samuel froze for a heartbeat, reading the fear etched deep in her gaze. She was trembling, yet there was a spark in her eyes, a fierce, desperate intelligence that belied her youth. "Easy," Samuel said, keeping his voice calm. He lowered his hand from the gun, though he remained ready. "You won't find trouble here, not if you stay quiet." The girl's name was Anna. She had been running from men who would see her dead rather than risk letting her speak. Her father, a local rancher, had crossed a gang that controlled half the county, and the price for defiance had fallen on his family. Anna's mother and younger brother were gone, slaughtered in the night, leaving her alone in a world that had grown cruel and unforgiving. Samuel studied her carefully. In her fear, he saw a reflection of a past he had tried to bury, the loss of his own family to a senseless feud years ago, a wound that had never truly healed. He had lived on this land long enough to trust his instincts, and his instincts screamed that she needed him, whether he wanted to accept the responsibility or not. "Who are they?" he asked quietly. "Gunman men with black hats," she whispered, voice shaking. "They said they'd hunt anyone who helped me." Samuel's jaw tightened. The sun was still low, and with daylight, the men would spread out, searching every barn, every hollow, every shadow. Protecting her meant risking everything he had left. His solitude, his safety, possibly his life. He stepped closer, his hand brushing a dusty beam for balance. "Then you hide," he said, "and you stay quiet. Understand?" Her nod was slight, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. Samuel felt the weight of choice settle on his shoulders, a burden he had hoped never to bear again. Yet here it was, thrust upon him by fate. A girl, 14, alone and hunted, and a man who had once abandoned hope himself. By mid-morning, the barn had become a sanctuary of shadows. Samuel moved with quiet efficiency, barricading gaps in the walls with loose boards and hay bales, creating a maze of cover should anyone enter. Anna crouched behind a stack of sacks, clutching a small satchel that held whatever remnants of her life she could carry. A faded photograph, a bit of bread, and a piece of string she twisted nervously between her fingers. The air was thick with tension. Outside, the wind whispered to the prairie grass, carrying with it faint hoofbeats in the distance. Samuel knew it was only a matter of time before the search party reached his land. He went to the loft, scanning the surrounding hills. Every ridge could hide a pair of eyes. Every shadow could conceal a gun barrel. Anna's voice trembled when she finally spoke. They'll kill me if they find me here. They've already killed everyone I love." Samuel's chest tightened. "We'll make sure they don't," he said, though he knew the words were more promise than certainty. He glanced toward the door and then back at her, noticing the dirt smudges on her face, the scratches on her arms. She was young, but her eyes held ferocity he recognized from the wild, determination, a will to survive. Hours stretched like an eternity. The quiet between the moments of panic was heavy, each creak of timber and rustle of hay sharpening their awareness. Samuel reviewed every possible route of escape, every place to hide, every strategy to outsmart the men who would not hesitate to kill. He had faced gunmen before, but never with a child's life tethered to his own decisions. The sun climbed higher, burning through the mist that had clung to the barn floor. Every passing minute carried danger closer. Samuel felt his old instinct stir. Calculations, predictions, contingencies. He could almost hear the horse's hooves growing nearer, feel the enemy's eyes scanning the terrain. And still, he would not let the girl face him alone. Anna finally asked, voice barely a whisper, "Why? Why are you helping me?" Samuel looked at her, his own reflection mirrored in her innocent yet hardened gaze. "Because it's the right thing," he said simply, "and because someone had to." By afternoon, the horizon revealed movement. 3 figures, black hats glinting in the sun, approaching fast. Samuel knew that once they saw the barn, they would circle round, cutting off escape. He whispered instructions to Anna, showing her how to stay low, how to listen, how to move silently. Every action was precise, measured, born of years surviving the frontier. The men were part of a gang that ruled terror over the surrounding territories. They had names whispered in fear: Cade, Rourke, and Dempsey, and they took pleasure in hunting those who dared defy them. Samuel recognized the telltale shine of their rifles, the set of their shoulders, and the casual cruelty in their movements. "Stay here," Samuel told Anna, "and whatever happens, don't move." He stepped outside, letting the warm sun burn the early morning frost from his coat, and met the first of the approaching riders. The tension was immediate, palpable. Dust swirled around their boots and horses, and Samuel felt the sudden clarity of life and death hanging in the air. Every instinct screamed to fight, to survive, to protect the girl whose life now intertwined with his own. The first words exchanged were harsh, clipped. "Harlan," one man called, voice carrying over the prairie. "We know she's here. Hand her over, or we'll burn the barn down." Samuel's eyes narrowed. He could feel the wind shift, the dust rising, the heat of the confrontation pressing on his shoulders. Yet he did not step back. He could not. "Not going to happen," he said, voice low and steady, though his pulse thudded like a drum in his ears. "Leave her out of this." The men laughed, a sound that carried malice across the fields. "Out of this? You're alone, Harlan. And by sunrise, every gunman in the territory will be hunting you if you don't give her up." Samuel's jaw set. He looked back toward the barn, toward Anna, and a grim resolve settled over him. He had chosen this path the moment he opened the door. Protecting her meant facing a tide of violence that would not forgive weakness. Yet, for the first time in years, he felt alive in a way he had not known, because survival was no longer just for himself. It was for someone else. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the barnyard, Samuel prepared. He would defend the girl. He would outwit the hunters. And when dawn came, the world would know that someone had dared to challenge the cruelest of men and survived to tell the tale. The horizon burned with the first full light of day as Samuel Harlan vaulted onto his horse, a warm but steady chestnut named Boone. Anna clung tightly behind him, her small arms around his waist, trembling yet holding on with determination. The barn was behind them now, the scene of their first confrontation, and the distant echo of the gunmen's shouts still pierced the crisp morning air. Dust rose in curling plumes under the pounding hooves as Samuel spurred Boone forward, instinct guiding him toward the only route that offered both cover and speed. "Hold on!" he shouted over wind, voice rough and urgent. Anna gripped the worn leather of his coat, teeth clenched against fear, eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of pursuit. The prairie stretched endlessly, waves of golden grass bending under the wind, punctuated by rocky outcroppings and sparse mesquite. Every shadow could conceal danger. Every ridge might hide a rifle barrel aimed straight at them. Behind them, Samuel could hear the gunmen mounting pursuit. Their black hats bobbed above the prairie, distant but unmistakable. The first bullets cut the air, kicking up sand and grass. Samuel ducked instinctively, Boone's muscles coiling beneath him as the horse surged forward. The wind stung his face, carrying the tang of dust and gunpowder. Anna's voice trembled. "They're fast. They'll catch us." "Not if we stay smart," Samuel yelled. "Keep low, stay tight." They ducked behind a small ridge, Samuel peering over the edge to gauge the distance. The 3 riders pressed onward, clearly determined to take no unnecessary risks. Samuel's heart pounded, not from a chase, but from a knowledge that Anna's life depended entirely on his skill and decisions. He had faced danger before, but never with a child so closely tethered to his fate. The first obstacle came in the form of a dry riverbed. Boone slid expertly down the slope, hose kicking rocks, then leapt across the jagged stones with a practiced grace. Anna cried out as they hit the other side, but Samuel's firm grip kept her safe. Every second mattered. One misstep, one hesitation, and they could be torn apart by the guns that now thundered closer. As they gained distance, Samuel spotted a cluster of trees ahead. Small shelter, perhaps enough to break line of sight, maybe even buy them time. He nudged Boone toward it, and the chestnut moved with precision born from years of shared trials. For a moment, a flicker of hope. Perhaps they could outwit these men. Perhaps they could survive another hour. The trees brought temporary respite, though the shadows were thin and the underbrush sparse. Samuel slowed Boone to a cautious trot, listening for the subtle shift of wind or the soft crack of twigs under hooves. Anna clutched her satchel, her knuckles white, lips pressed tight against fear. "Keep quiet," Samuel whispered. "Every sound tells them where we are." Anna's wide eyes reflected both terror and determination. She had seen death before, yes, but now, facing it directly, she realized survival required more than hiding. It required instinct, courage, and trust in another human being. Samuel glanced at her, noting the way she had grown sharper in just a few hours, the way her small hands gripped Boone's mane with a steadiness he hadn't expected. They moved carefully, taking shallow trails, stepping lightly over roots and rocks. Samuel's mind worked as fast as his legs and eyes, calculating every possible ambush, every sniper spot. A sudden rustle in the underbrush made them halt. Both turned toward it, muscles tensed. A coyote emerged, sniffing cautiously, and Samuel exhaled slowly, shoulders loosening just enough. Survival in the wilderness was not only about avoiding men. It was about avoiding death from every living thing that inhabited this harsh land. The day wore on. Hunger gnawed at Anna's small frame, and Samuel tore off a piece of dried jerky from his own pack, handing it to her. She ate with barely a glance, more focused on listening for the faintest sound of pursuit. Hours passed with tense calculation, finding water from a shallow creek, avoiding exposed plains where bullets could travel unseen, and resting in shallow gullies where the sun cast long shadows. Every movement deepened their bond. Samuel's instincts to protect were heightened, tempered by Anna's own growing resourcefulness. She learned quickly how to whisper warnings, how to anticipate danger, how to help steer Boone along safer paths. Samuel noticed, with a mix of pride and surprise, that she was becoming more than just someone to save. She was a partner in survival. Late afternoon brought a rocky ridge overlooking a narrow canyon. Samuel paused, scanning the horizon. The three gunmen were closing in again, and this time, the terrain gave them cover for an ambush. He dismounted, leading Boone down the safer side, while Anna followed, tense but obedient. "Stay close. Move silently. Don't let them hear your breath," Samuel instructed, voice low and clipped. A single shot rang out from the ridge above, striking a rock near them. Dust and pebbles skittered across the trail. Anna flinched, but Samuel's calm hand on her shoulder grounded her. "Not today," he said, eyes flashing with warning. They descended into the canyon, muscles aching, hearts hammering, and stumbled upon a small cabin partially hidden by trees. Smoke rose lazily from the chimney, and a figure appeared in the doorway. A hermit, perhaps late 50s, wiry and weathered, with a patchwork coat and keen, suspicious eyes. Samuel approached cautiously. "Looking for trouble?" the man rasped. "Just shelter," Samuel said. "We're being hunted. She's with me." The hermit's eyes flicked to Anna, noting her age, her frailty, and yet the unmistakable resolve in her stance. After a long pause, he stepped aside. "You can stay for now, but any noise, any trouble, and you'll answer to me." Inside, Anna breathed her first deep breath in hours. The small cabin offered more than physical shelter. It gave a momentary reprieve, a place to plan their next move. Samuel and the hermit exchanged brief, knowing glances. In the wilderness, sometimes allies came in unexpected forms, people hardened by solitude and circumstance who recognized the value of helping someone desperate enough to risk everything. By nightfall, Samuel had laid out a plan. They would use the shadows of the canyon, move under cover, and attempt to outmaneuver their pursuers. Anna listened intently, her fear tempered by newfound trust. This was no longer simply about running. It was a test of cunning, courage, and will. And in the quiet of the hermit's cabin, with Boone tied outside, Samuel realized that protecting this girl was transforming him, reawakening instincts he thought long dead. Hope, connection, and the enduring strength to face any danger. The canyon was quiet now, save for the soft rustle of wind through jagged rocks and the distant, intermittent cry of a hawk. Samuel Harlan, 42, stood at the mouth of a narrow gorge, eyes scanning the horizon with the precision of a man who had spent decades reading danger before it arrived. Anna, 14, crouched beside him, clutching her satchel and Boone's reins, eyes wide but steady. The hermit's cabin, now behind them, had provided temporary safety, but the three black-hatted gunmen were relentless, moving like shadows across the distant ridges. "Ready?" Samuel whispered, his voice low, calm, but carrying the weight of command. Anna nodded, teeth clenched, determination now mingled with fear. She had learned much in the past day. How to read terrain, how to keep silent, how to trust someone else with her life. Her small frame tensed, muscles coiled, ready to move at a moment's notice. The gunmen appeared over the ridge first, rifles glinting in the late afternoon sun. Cade, the leader, eyes sharp and cruel, grinned as he recognized Samuel. "Harlan," he spat, voice carrying over the wind. "Thought you could hide a girl from us?" That barn was just the beginning. Samuel's hand rested lightly on the grip of his Colt, finger brushing the worn steel. Boone shifted under him, sensing tension, muscles taut. "You'll leave her alone or you'll regret it," Samuel said, voice low and steady. Every syllable carried the weight of a man who had chosen his ground and would not yield. The first shot rang out. Samuel ducked instinctively, Boone's body following the curve of the canyon as a bullet kicked dust and pebbles into the air. Anna pressed herself flat behind a boulder, eyes wide, heart hammering. Another shot cracked. The echo ricocheted through the rocks. Samuel fired back, calm and precise, forcing the gunman to take cover behind jagged outcroppings. The canyon became a chessboard of survival. Rocks, shadows, and ridges offered fleeting cover. Samuel moved with purpose, guiding Anna with whispered instructions. "Keep low. Don't peek. Watch the ridge to your left. That's your line of escape if I get pinned." Hours seemed to pass in minutes. Samuel and Anna darted from cover to cover, the ground beneath them jagged, unyielding. Samuel's old wounds ached, muscles screamed, yet adrenaline carried him forward. He saw the girl in a new light, not simply someone to save, but a symbol of resilience, courage born of necessity. Anna, in turn, saw Samuel not just as protector, but as the anchor keeping chaos at bay, the man willing to risk everything to ensure she survived. Cade's gang tried every trick, flanking maneuvers, feints, sudden bursts of fire. Yet Samuel anticipated, predicted, and countered. His knowledge of terrain, his bond with Boone, and his growing trust in Anna allowed them to stay just ahead of death's shadow. One near miss, a bullet splitting a boulder inches from Anna's head, made her knees shake, but she remained rooted in place, eyes fixed on Samuel. "Now," he whispered, "move through the narrow pass. It's tight, but they can't flank you there." The pass was treacherous. Sharp rocks, loose scree, sudden drops. Samuel led, Anna following, Boone picking his footing with careful precision. One wrong step, and they could tumble into the canyon below. The gunmen fired sporadically, bullets whistling past, but the narrow path favored Samuel's speed and familiarity. Finally, they reached a small plateau overlooking the river below. Samuel could see the gunmen regrouping, frustrated, shouting orders to one another. He allowed himself a brief exhale, just enough to steady Boone, just enough to communicate a quiet reassurance to Anna. "You did well," he said, voice low. Anna's lips trembled, a small nod, her hands gripping the satchel tighter. For the first time since the chase began, a sliver of hope appeared on the horizon. But Samuel knew the final challenge awaited. He had baited the enemy here, and now it was time to finish the standoff. Samuel positioned himself and Anna near the edge of the plateau, using the rocks as cover, Boone beside them. The river below carved a winding path through the canyon, the only realistic escape route left. He had a plan, but it required precision and timing. Draw the gunmen into a narrow corridor, split their focus, and use the terrain to neutralize their advantage. The black-hatted trio approached with caution, scanning the rocks, rifles at the ready. Cade took the lead, his eyes cruel and calculating. Rourke and Dempsey flanked, scanning every shadow. Samuel waited, muscles coiled, eyes sharp. Boone shifted, sensing the imminent tension. Anna pressed close to him, small and tense, yet unwavering. The first exchange was brutal. Samuel fired, forcing the lead gunman behind cover. Anna ducked instinctively, then followed Samuel's whispered instructions to nudge Boone toward a flanking position. Together, they created confusion, forcing the gunmen to split, their precision faltering in the tight canyon. One shot rang dangerously close, striking the ground between them and sending dust into Anna's face. She coughed but did not move from Samuel's side. He glanced at her, pride and fierce protectiveness coiling together. She was no longer just a child in need. She was courage incarnate, a survivor forged by desperation and guided by his mentorship. Samuel's plan worked. Using the natural bottleneck of the canyon, he forced Cade to take a risk, move forward or be trapped. A sharp shot from Samuel's Colt pinned him to cover, and Rourke and Dempsey faltered, uncertain, exposed. The narrow canyon left no room for their typical flanking maneuvers. Finally, Samuel saw the opening. He spurred Boone slightly, leading the girl down the slope toward the riverbank, where the current was strong but manageable. They navigated the rocks with painstaking care, the water cold against their boots. Anna's breath steamed in the evening air, but she remained steady, following Samuel's every command. The gunmen hesitated at the edge, their advantage lost. Cade cursed under his breath, realizing their prey was slipping from their grasp. Samuel's heart pounded, but he did not falter. Every step, every breath, every instruction counted. They reached the river, Boone stepping carefully into the shallow current, Samuel supporting Anna as she balanced, satchel clutched tightly. The moment of crossing was tense, but they succeeded. Samuel glanced back once, watching the gunmen hesitate, frustrated by terrain, exhausted, and unable to advance without risking themselves. The canyon behind them was a fortress. Their pursuers stalled, and for the first time in hours, a sense of temporary safety washed over them. As night fell, Samuel and Anna reached a small grove across the river. Fires from distant cabins glowed faintly on the horizon, but the immediate danger had passed, for now. Samuel untied Boone, letting the chestnut paw at the soft earth. Anna hugged the satchel to her chest, relief washing over her in silent tears. Samuel allowed himself a moment of reflection, eyes scanning the darkening sky, the canyon walls, the vastness of the frontier. He had risked everything for this girl, and in doing so, had reclaimed a piece of his own humanity. Fear, courage, grief, and determination had intertwined into a hard-won bond. The frontier had tested him, pushed him to his limits, but he had emerged with life intact. Not just his own, but hers. Anna finally spoke, voice quiet but resolute. "Thank you for not leaving me." Samuel looked at her, fatigue etched into his face but tempered by a faint smile. "No one survives alone out here. Not you, not me, and no one should ever have to." They settled near the grove, Boone grazing, the night wind rustling leaves, carrying the scent of distant fires and open plains. The danger had not vanished entirely, but the immediate threat had passed. Samuel and Anna had endured the crucible together, emerging stronger, bonded by shared survival. As the stars appeared above the canyon, Samuel allowed himself a rare, quiet thought. This world of dust, danger, and lawless men was harsh and unforgiving, but within it, courage and humanity still existed. He had found it in a 14-year-old girl who refused to give up, and in himself, a man who had once abandoned hope, but now understood the true measure of bravery. And so, under the vast night sky of the frontier, with the canyon silent except for the soft whisper of the wind and Boone's steady breathing, Samuel and Anna rested, ready for whatever dawn would bring. Their journey had not ended, but they had survived. Together,